So you guys have sent us some really interesting stuff this time, research and articles on crowd safety.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things that you don't really think about until you're in it, right?
Absolutely.
Like we've all been in a crowd,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's at a concert or a Black Friday sale or just
Yeah.
in a big city, and all of a sudden you realize like, whoa,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people here, and this could get out of control quickly.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
how do we make sure that those situations that we've all been in don't turn dangerous? And that's what this deep dive is about today.
That's right.
And we're going to be talking about extreme value analysis, which I'll admit I didn't know too much about this going in.
Yeah.
But EVA,
Yeah.
as it's known, is all about learning from the past to protect the future. So I'm excited to unpack this with you.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so essentially, we're using data and statistics to predict the probability of rare but high-impact events.
Yeah.
That can turn a fun gathering into a disaster.
Exactly. It's like having a crystal ball for crowd safety. But instead of magic, we're using data.
Yeah, and the data's coming from some of these crazy crowd events of the past.
Exactly.
Right.
We're looking for those events that kind of stand out from the norm, like major accidents like the Iroquois Theatre fire in Chicago back in 1903 and the Coconut Grove Nightclub fire in Boston in 1942. Both tragedies, despite happening decades apart, had strikingly similar contributing factors.
And decades apart. And still having these contributing factors.
Yeah.
So what were some of the things they had in common?
Things like flammable decorations,
Wow.
locked exits,
Oh, wow.
overcrowding, and a lack of trained staff. It's amazing how even across such a vast time difference, the same issues keep cropping up.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I've seen over and over again in these articles
Yeah.
you sent is that the Iroquois Theatre fire, they locked the exits because they didn't want people sneaking in without paying.
Yeah.
And so when the fire broke out, people were trapped.
That's awful. Yeah, you see that so often.
Yeah. So it's like those split-second decisions. Right. I guess in that case, it wasn't even a split-second decision. It was
Okay.
an intentional decision.
Yeah, a calculated one.
But the effects can be so devastating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a sobering reminder that history often repeats itself, especially if we don't learn from the past.
Yeah. And we see that over and over again. I mean, how many times have we seen a school shooting and then the same thing happens a few months later?
Yeah.
And you think, like, how could we not have learned from that last one?
Right.
So it's a good reminder to always be learning from the past.
Right.
But, we're not just talking about those large-scale disasters, are we?
Yeah.
You said a lot of stuff about these near misses.
Right.
So tell me about near misses and how those play into EVA.
Those near misses are crucial. They're the events that could have been catastrophic, but for whatever reason
Why?
weren't. Think of it like dodging a bullet. Even though no major tragedy occurred, these near misses give us valuable insights into potential weaknesses in our planning and systems.
Okay, so this is like that saying.
Yeah.
Or I don't know if it's a saying, but
Yeah.
like those, You almost get in a car accident,
Right.
and then you're like, oh my God, I'm so glad I didn't. But it makes you a better driver.
Exactly.
Right.
It's like a warning sign, a chance to course correct before something truly serious happens.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
So, and this is where this high frequency, low intensity kind of events come in.
Exactly. They happen more often,
Mhm.
but the immediate impact is usually minor. But here's the thing. Each near miss is an opportunity to learn and improve.
Okay. So
Give me an example.
let's say you're managing a series of concerts
Okay.
and you consistently notice overcrowding and near hysteria at the front of the stage. That's a pattern.
Right.
That's a red flag that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. Even though no one was trampled. Maybe a few people fainted or something, but
Right.
it's something that you need to pay attention to and go, okay, how can we change this so that it doesn't become a bigger problem later?
Yeah. If you're managing a series of concerts, you don't want to wait until there's, dozens of people injured to say, okay, now we need to rethink this.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's these little things that we can pay attention to.
And that's what EVA helps us do.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got these two levels of events.
Right.
The low-frequency, high-intensity disasters and the high-frequency, low-intensity near misses.
Yeah.
And both of those provide valuable data for EVA.
Precisely. By analyzing both types of events, we can start to identify patterns and contributing factors that might otherwise go unnoticed. This allows us to move from a reactive approach to crowd safety to a proactive one.
I love that. We're being proactive instead of reactive.
Exactly.
So, I'm starting to see how this EVA could be a game changer.
Yeah.
So how do we take all this historical data, all these patterns that we're seeing, and actually use them to prevent future incidents? Because it's not just about knowing what went wrong before, is it?
No, it's about understanding why those things went wrong.
Okay.
Like, take the Hillsborough disaster in 1989, for example.
Yeah, so this was
A tragic incident at a football match in England.
Yeah, I've heard of this. Yeah.
Where, unfortunately, 96 people lost their lives. What's fascinating is that when we apply EVA and look back, we see some striking similarities with a disaster that occurred over 40 years earlier at Burnden Park in 1946.
Really?
Late arrival of crowds, overwhelmed entrances, a lack of effective crowd control, untrained staff, and authorities misinterpreting the situation as a public order problem instead of a safety issue.
Wow. So over 40 years apart?
Yeah.
Same basic problems.
Same underlying problems.
Wow. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And a little frightening how those factors repeat themselves across such different events.
Yeah, and that's why studying past incidents, even those that seem unrelated to the specific event we're planning for, is so crucial.
Okay. Because it's about recognizing that even though the events themselves might be different, the underlying dynamics of crowd behavior can be surprisingly similar.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A cue is a cue. Whether it's for a rock concert
Okay.
or a Black Friday sale at a department store.
Yeah.
The behavior patterns, the potential for things to go wrong, they share common threads.
Okay, so you're saying that there's lessons to be learned from seemingly different settings.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. One of the things that you highlighted here from the article was this word isomorphism. And I have to admit, I'd never heard that word before.
Yeah.
So can you explain what isomorphism is?
Isomorphism is a fancy way of saying that seemingly different systems can share common failure modes. It's about recognizing that the same problems can crop up in unexpected places.
Just because
plan
a Black Friday sale at a department store doesn't mean that I shouldn't be looking at crowd safety incidents at concerts and sporting events.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
By looking beyond your specific industry, you can get a much broader perspective on potential risks and how to mitigate them.
Okay.
You know, one of the things, your sources highlighted several retail examples.
Yeah?
IKEA,
Oh, yeah?
Primark, Gucci, and
Yeah.
Walmart. They've all experienced crowd-related incidents, often triggered by special sales or promotions that drew far more people than anticipated.
Wow. So it really is just about a crowd as a crowd,
Right.
regardless of the context.
Exactly.
Okay, so now I'm thinking, okay, so now we've got this great data, this history that we can look at to be proactive instead of reactive. How do we apply this to actually managing a crowd?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's where it gets really interesting. Crowd management can be broken down into key phases, and EVA can help us assess and mitigate risks at each stage.
Okay.
But we can dive deeper into that in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay. I like it.
Yeah.
So we're going to leave them hanging
Yeah.
just for a little bit.
Just for a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So stay tuned.
Yeah.
And we'll be right back to talk about those key phases of crowd management and how EVA can help us mitigate the risks in each one.
Sounds good.
All right, so we've got all this great data right from the past, and we're being proactive instead of reactive.
Right.
So you mentioned that crowd management can be broken down into key phases. I'm ready to hear about those.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's walk through those phases, keeping in mind that EVA's role is to anticipate and mitigate risks at every step.
Okay. Where do we begin?
We begin at the beginning, arrival and queuing. This is where those first impressions are made. And it's crucial to manage expectations and crowd flow right from the start.
Okay.
Think about clear signage, designated waiting areas, and efficient queuing management systems.
Okay, so this is all about preventing those bottlenecks, those really frustrating long lines that we've all been in at some point.
Exactly. Those situations can escalate quickly if not handled well. Yeah.
Remember those Black Friday shopping frenzies we discussed earlier? Many incidents stemmed from poorly managed queues and a lack of clear communication.
Yeah, it just takes one person to kind of push or shove or get impatient, and then it can set off a chain reaction.
Absolutely.
Okay, so EVA helps us analyze past incidents to see what went wrong during this arrival and queuing phase. And then we can plan accordingly.
Precisely.
Okay.
Let's say you're planning a large outdoor concert.
Right.
Looking at past events, you might discover that a lack of clear entry points and designated queuing areas led to confusion and crowding using EVA principles. You can proactively address this by designing a layout that encourages a smooth flow of people, along with clear signage and staff trained to manage the crowds.
Okay, so that's a much better experience for everybody.
Right.
People aren't getting frustrated.
Exactly.
They know where they're going.
Less likely to have incidents.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got people arriving. They're queued up. What's next? Next is ingress, or processing. This is where you're getting people through security checkpoints, ticket booths, or even just the entrance to the venue. It's all about maintaining order and efficiency to avoid those crush points where people can get injured.
Right, so like the entrance to a stadium.
Okay.
Security checkpoints at the airport.
Exactly. So this is a major focal point in crowd safety analysis. For example, the Hillsborough disaster we discussed earlier was largely attributed to failures during ingress, overcrowding at the turnstiles, coupled with a lack of communication and crowd control measures, led to a fatal crush.
Yeah, that's a stark reminder of how important it is to get this ingress phase, right?
Absolutely.
Because you've got a large amount of people coming in, going through a relatively small area.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how can EVA help us with that?
Using EVA principles we can learn from past tragedies like Hillsborough to inform our planning. This might involve implementing timed entry systems, increasing the number of entry points, or even using technology like RFID tags to monitor crowd density in real time.
Okay, so technology is playing a role here too.
Absolutely. And that's something we'll explore further in another deep dive.
Cool. I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got people in.
Right.
They've arrived. They've been queued up. They've gone through the ingress. Now we're at the main event, right?
Attendance, the main event itself.
So the concert, the game, the sale, whatever it is.
We never brought them all together.
That everyone's there for.
Yeah.
What are the key considerations there?
So during this phase, the focus shifts to maintaining a safe crowd density within the venue.
Okay.
This involves things like ensuring adequate space for movement, providing clear lines of sight to exits, and having trained staff on hand to monitor crowd behavior and respond to any incidents.
Okay.
So thinking back to that concert example,
Yeah.
you know, you're going to have areas that are going to be higher density than others. Right.
Like in front of the stage.
Yeah.
Or near the bar.
Yeah.
Those are the areas that you're going to want to be paying close attention to.
And I'm thinking about mosh pits at concerts too, where, you know, it's intentional. The high density, but it can be really hard to control sometimes.
Yeah, those are definitely situations that require close monitoring.
Yeah.
And, you know, thinking back to those near misses, those can provide valuable insights into how to manage those situations.
Yeah, so even though it's intentional, you're still going to have these near misses where maybe the mosh pit gets a little too...
Right, a little too rowdy.
And you have to kind of...
That's right.
Step in and make sure that nobody gets hurt.
Exactly.
You know? So that's interesting. So we've got to think about those high energy moments too.
Yeah.
And how to keep those from getting out of control.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we're at the end of the main event. Now we need to get everybody out.
Right. The last phase. Egress, which includes any potential evacuation scenario. Okay, so this is getting everybody out safely and efficiently, especially if there's an emergency.
Yeah.
This seems just as critical as ingress.
Absolutely.
Maybe even more so.
In an emergency situation, people are likely to panic.
Right.
And a well-planned egress strategy can be the difference between a chaotic evacuation and an orderly one.
Absolutely. Because if everybody's panicking and they don't know where to go, then it just gets...
It's like a herd of, you know...
Yeah, it's a stampede.
Yeah, exactly.
And those can be deadly.
Absolutely.
So, EVA plays a crucial role in this egress phase as well.
It's absolutely essential. Analyzing past evacuations, both successful and unsuccessful ones, can reveal key insights into crowd behavior and how to optimize exit routes, signage, and communication protocols.
Okay.
Remember, a panic crowd can quickly become a dangerous crowd, so every second counts in an emergency situation.
Yeah. It's all about getting people out as quickly and safely as possible. So it sounds like applying these EVA principles to egress can really be the difference between life and death. Worst case scenario. So we've walked through each of these phases of crowd management, arrival and queuing ingress, the attendance phase, and then egress.
Right.
And we've seen how EVA can help us identify potential risks and develop proactive strategies at each stage. It's been a fascinating deep dive for me. I hope it has been for you guys too.
It has for me.
So We're just scratching the surface here, though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much more to explore
Absolutely.
in terms of how EVA is being used to make crowds safer.
Yeah.
Is there anything in particular that stands out to you as a promising area of development in this field?
I think one of the most promising areas is the use of technology and data analytics.
Okay.
We touched on this earlier with the RFID tags for real-time crowd density monitoring, but there's so much more happening.
Okay.
Think about AI-powered systems that can analyze security camera footage to detect potential crowd surges before they happen.
Wow.
Or predictive models that can help organizers estimate crowd size and flow patterns based on factors like weather and social media trends.
So this is like we're taking all this data.
Yeah.
And we're actually able to almost predict the future a little bit.
In a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
It is.
So if somebody's listening to this and they are involved in planning or managing events, or even if they're just interested in crowd safety in general, what would you say is the key takeaway here?
Stay curious and stay informed.
Okay.
The field of crowd safety is constantly evolving with new research technologies and best practices emerging all the time. So don't be afraid to reach out to experts, attend industry conferences, and read up on the latest developments. The more you learn, the better equipped you'll be to create safer environments for everyone.
Yeah, I love that. So this has been a really eye-opening deep dive for me.
Yeah.
We started by talking about learning from the past, both from those major disasters and those near misses. And then we talked about how those lessons can be applied across different industries and settings, thanks to that idea of isomorphism. And then finally, we saw how all of that can be integrated into every phase of crowd management, from arrival all the way to egress. And it's amazing to me how much technology is playing a role in making these events safer than ever before.
It really is amazing.
So hopefully you guys listening have been as inspired by this as I have to think differently about crowd safety and consider how these EVA principles can be applied in your own life, in your work, or in your community. Remember, knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
And every lesson that we learn has the potential to save lives.
That's right.
So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking those tough questions. That's it for our deep dive on crowd safety and EVA. We hope you found it informative and thought-provoking. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and keep diving deep into the world around you.